Linda, I'm sure there's part of you that's going, well, isn't this nice, all these Conservatives with their now newly found bleeding hearts, but you know where we all come from, you certainly know where I come from, about just basic humanity, right? The basic normal assistance going, okay, again, I get what the government can do, I get what the government can't do, I also get what the government can seem like it's prioritising, and we saw this year, I'm going to go there, we saw $450 million on something they really wanted to do. Right, and you can travel around the country and advocate for it, and you can take up every single media appearance talking about that if that's what you really want to do. They're not doing that on this issue because if you admit there's a problem, then you have to solve the problem or you own the problem. But what are you thinking about when it comes to these people? I mean, that huge, more than half of the country that's going to have a different Christmas.
Look, I don't think anybody's arguing. I certainly would never argue that this year in particular, there's not a whole lot of Australian families that are finding it really difficult. There's always people who are insulated from cost of living pressures and, of course, from inflation. But governing during a period of record, length inflation, sticky inflation right across the world that started, we know, to bump up when the Russian invasion of Ukraine happened and has carried over and is a lot stickier than many economists predicted and most people want. These are really difficult times to govern. Our council in the City of Sydney, we've recently put $1.5 million more towards food grants. This is not a normal local government activity, and yet we absolutely wanted to ensure, Paul, that we were doing everything we could. So there's no argument that people are not doing it tough. But it is important to focus on those cost of living improvements, halving, the cost of prescription medication, making sure that childcare is cheaper, closing the loopholes bill to make sure that people's wages are going up and they're not getting paid less than the person next to them doing the same job. These are the kind of important things that the federal government has done to make life a little bit easier. It won't solve the problem, there's no argument about that, but similarly, we've come off the back of a government that has invested in stimulus payments during COVID, and as a result,
that every person demanded in the country.
Absolutely.
And that the Labor Party supported and
actually
called for us to extend. They wanted us to extend.
JobKeeper's not a bad thing.
I'm acknowledging
but they wanted to extend it.
But what did it do? It left the greatest debt in living history in Australia for government. And so now we've got to deal with that.
But we also
nobody is denying that, right?
But we have demand-side inflation now. It's not supply-side inflation, which was at the end of COVID.
War in Ukraine,
no, that's supply-side inflation. That's when supply chains are difficult. This is demand-driven inflation. This is local inflation because it is now being driven by the high level of immigrants that are coming in, and we're seeing that pressure going onto the economy. We are fundamentally in a per capita recession. We are in a per capita recession. Now. The only thing that is keeping the national accounts out of an absolute recession is the level of immigration. That is it. We are in a per capita recession. Australians' life is quality of life is going backwards. There's no way to look around it.
Well, so I was. Well, I was just going to say, sorry, you could answer it however you wish, but add to that then, new Queensland Premier today, Stephen Miles, stands up, first sort of moment of I'm in charge, 75% emissions cut. Okay, that means, maybe they'll be able to stave off the Greens in the southeast Queensland seats. But everyone knows that means a cost of transition. Is that really what Australians are demanding right now?
And I'll come back to that, Paul, but I just want to say that another big thing there that Linda left out is this migration issue. That's something this government has done. They botched the recovery from COVID. We had to open our borders. We didn't have to completely open the floodgates, though, and take in a number of people more than the city of Canberra in a year. And they've had no plan to deal with people coming in at that rate, no plan for housing, no plan for infrastructure. And that has led to a significant amount of inflation and pain for a lot of Australians who can't find housing. The government has got to take some blame for that. And to your point too, another thing Linda didn't mention there was the Labor Party promised us, just 20 months ago, promised us that they would cut people's power bills by $275. Sure. And can I remind everybody that the war in Ukraine was already raging. Gas prices had already surged by the time of the election last year. And the Labor Party was standing there saying they would cut your power bills by $275. 100%. And they haven't done that. And now you can see a new Queensland government, instead of focusing on that, focusing on delivering energy price cuts, They are focused on what they think should happen in 2035. Now, Stephen Miles, whatever his dreams are for the election next year, I'll make this bold prediction, Paul. He won't be the Queensland Premier in 2035.
We should
it's easy to make promises for things when you won't be around at that time. What people would prefer from the new Queensland Premier is he makes some commitments for the next year, for the next couple of years. And the simple fact is that as long as Labor stays tied to this green obsession with solar and wind, they are not going to bring down your power bills because they're failed policies.
So,
the policies are bad. It's not the communication, it's not the messaging. The policies don't work. And if you want a government to get your power bills down, you've got to have a government that's going to invest in all types of energy to get more supply of energy up and get prices down.